Heartwarming twist, single mom discovers billionaire paid her rent, transforming her life forever. Sarah's heart raced as she tore open the envelope that morning, sunlight spilling through her small kitchen window. Inside, she found the notice that sent her whole world into a spin. "Your rent has been paid for the next 6 months." She stared at the words, mouth agape, and blinked in disbelief. Who? Why? The name Anonymous felt like a weighty joke, like someone was dangling hope just out of reach. Living in a vibrant suburban Chicago neighborhood, Sarah juggled life as a single mom to her spirited daughter, Emma. Between her shift at the diner and the nightly waitressing to make ends meet, she'd never imagined someone would reach out like this. The aroma of burnt toast filled the air as her mind raced. Was this a kindness meant to belittle her hard work? Tears pooled in her eyes. She hated that she needed it but appreciated it all the same. A muffled knock at the door broke her spiral, and Emma bounded in, her laughter a sweet relief from life's burdens. "Mom! Can we go to the park today?" Her eyes sparkled with innocence, an unshakable reminder that love trumped everything. But whispers began to ripple through the community. Local news stations picked up on her story, dubbing her a heroic single mom. That label hit Sarah hard. Every smile from strangers felt like a spotlight shining down on her. With each report, it felt less about her struggle and more a public spectacle. Old family dynamics stirred like a long-dormant storm, as her estranged mother reached out, wanting to mend old wounds. The tactic felt less like care and more like another layer of pressure as Sarah wrestled with her self-worth in this shifting landscape. As Emma giggled about something insignificant, Sarah felt an ache in her chest. She loved being a mom, but the anxiety of being celebrated while feeling so broken gnawed at her. The way their lives transformed from a modest family into a symbol for hope was overwhelming. She longed for normalcy, the comforting simplicity of tackling the day-to-day without being a figure of fame. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, but then, the plot thickened like a heavy soup simmering too long. Sarah learned that her benefactor wasn't just any kind soul, he was deeply entrenched in a controversial corporate project that was set to alter the landscape of their town. Was this kindness a publicity stunt? Was there a hidden agenda? Questions echoed like a haunting refrain in her mind as community support turned to scrutiny. As she stood at the crossroads of accepting help, Sarah felt the weight of judgment loom around her. How could she swallow her pride without losing herself in the process? The public eye was relentless, watching her every move. Just when she thought she'd decided to confront her benefactor, Emma forged a connection with a classmate whose family faced their own struggles. The blossoming friendship caused reverberations that pulled the community deeper into her world. Tension flared as all eyes shifted toward Sarah. Would she find the courage to embrace her reality or succumb to the pressures of what society expected her to be? The clock ticked down to her fateful meeting with the man behind her unexpected good fortune. As anticipation brewed in the air, Sarah stood on the edge, ready to confront her fate with all the hopes and fears intertwined, leaving everything hanging in the balance. The clock seemed to move in slow motion as Sarah stood in front of the polished glass doors of the sleek downtown office building. It felt surreal, stepping into a world so different from her own. She reached up to adjust her hair, feeling a mix of determination and trepidation. This meeting could change everything, not just for her but for Emma as well. With each step toward the elevator, her heart raced faster. What would she say? How could she possibly ask the questions her heart screamed to have answered? The walls of the elevator encased her as she ascended, and she took a deep breath, willing herself to be brave. In her mind, she replayed the moment she had first read the notice. Was this billionaire a guardian angel or a puppeteer? As the elevator dinged and the doors opened, Sarah stepped into a bright, modern lobby. She couldn't shake off the feeling that everyone was watching her, an imposter ready to be unmasked. She was ushered to a sleek conference room, its glass walls allowing anyone in the building to watch her and the man who had changed her life so dramatically. When he entered, Sarah was momentarily taken aback. He was tall, with an easy confidence that filled the room. Dressed in a tailored suit, he exuded a polished charm that could disarm anyone. Yet his smile, genuine as it seemed, felt like a mask, a performance crafted for public consumption. "Sarah," he greeted warmly, extending a hand. "I'm Daniel Hayes." "Nice to meet you," she replied, shaking his hand and feeling the electric warmth of his grasp. The connection was immediate, laced with an unspoken understanding of each other's plight. "Please, take a seat," he gestured, and she sank into the chair, feeling both small and significant. He started by explaining the project that had brought him to the area, the redevelopment plan that aimed to transform the community but had stirred discontent among residents. His voice was smooth, but Sarah could sense the tension underlying it. It seemed he was not just there to discuss her situation but to plead his case. "Your story hit home for me," he continued, leaning in slightly. "I know what it's like to feel trapped by circumstances beyond your control. I wanted to help. But I also believe in what we're trying to do here. Don't you want to see this neighborhood thrive?" The weight of his words pressed down on her, and Sarah felt a storm brewing inside. It was hard to focus on his vision when all that resonated within her was the realization that her life, her struggles, had become collateral in someone else's plans. But was it just a PR move? She blurted out, her voice trembling slightly. Daniel's demeanor shifted, the charm faltering momentarily. "It's not about the publicity. It's about genuine change," he insisted, his eyes locking onto hers with fierce intensity. "You're not a project to me. You're a person I want to lift up. But I can't do it alone. I need the community's support." As emotions wove their way through the conversation, Sarah couldn't help but feel sympathy mixed with resentment. Lives were more than projects, and people deserved more than being pawns in someone else's game. The conversation stretched on, each word pulling her deeper into a moral quandary. In a world where her struggle had become a spectacle, could she trust this man with her future? Was there a real chance for change, or would she be drawn into a scheme that exploited her vulnerability? Just as she opened her mouth to voice her doubts, a sudden loud pounding on the glass door interrupted, pulling her focus. A group of protesters had gathered outside, holding signs demanding transparency in the redevelopment projects. Her heart raced as the sound echoed in her chest. This was more than just a personal crossroads, it was the moment as much for the community as it was for her. Sarah felt the weight of her choice hang in the air, and with a shaky breath, she realized she had to make a decision. Could she weave her aspirations with the fabric of community upheaval? What if accepting his help meant compromising her values? As she looked into Daniel's eyes, she sensed the story was just beginning to unfold. And that made her wonder, would she be a part of the solution or the problem? The choice lay heavy on her heart, and as the protesters' voices grew louder, she knew she had to decide. What would she do next? Sarah's heart pounded like a drum as the sound of pounding fists against glass reminded her that this moment wasn't just about her. The protesters outside shouted for change, their voices a clarion call she couldn't ignore. Daniel shifted slightly in his chair, glancing at the ruckus outside, and Sarah could see the flicker of discomfort in his expression. "Do you think it's fair?" she asked suddenly, finding her voice stronger than she had anticipated. "To come here with a shiny plan and expect everyone to just follow along? Do you even know what these people are fighting for?" Daniel took a breath, his calm demeanor faltering. "Sarah, I wouldn't be here unless I believed in what we're trying to achieve. I want to create opportunities, not just for you but for everyone affected by the project." The conviction in his voice made her pause. There was a sincerity in his eyes that spoke to her curiosity but also ignited a flicker of hope. Was there a real chance for change? And more importantly, could she believe in him? As the shouting intensified, so did her inner turmoil. On one hand, there was this man, a benefactor in many ways, but the chaos outside reflected her community's genuine fears, fears she had embraced every single day. She thought of Emma, of the life they wanted to build together. "I have to protect my daughter," Sarah felt compelled to say. "If I take your help, what does that say to her about my independence? About what we stand for?" "Taking help isn't weakness," Daniel countered, his voice steady. "It's strength. You can be both a mother and a fighter for your community. It's not about one at the expense of the other." His words lingered in the air, a challenge that stirred something deep within her. The protest chants surged in intensity, filling her ears but also prompting her to confront the reality of her own choices. Sarah shifted slightly, looking back from Daniel to the scene outside, a mix of passionate individuals who believed in something greater than themselves. They were raw and real while she sat within these polished walls. Were her desires for a brighter future for Emma and herself worth potentially sacrificing the dreams of others? "I can't be part of something that undermines everything these people stand for," she said finally, meeting Daniel's gaze with resolve. "If I'm going to say yes, I need to know you're genuine. I need to believe you mean what you say about community." Daniel leaned back, a contemplative look crossing his face. "You want transparency? Then let us create that. Share your story, bring those voices in. Together, we can be a bridge, not a barrier." The atmosphere in the room shifted as hope flickered to life, pushing back the clouds of doubt. They could create a collaborative narrative, one that blended her community's needs with his vision for redevelopment. But, she hesitated, the weight of the decision still pressing down on her. "What if after everything, you don't deliver? Then we both fail. But I can promise you that I will fight for what we believe in together." Determination sharpened his features. As she absorbed his words, the reality of the situation loomed even larger. It was an opportunity, a path forward, but also a tightrope walk. Sarah would have to navigate pitfalls along the way. The protesters outside began to chant Emma's name, and her heart clenched at the idea of her daughter realizing that a completely unknown man was now part of their story. Could she convince them to believe? Could she convince herself? Feeling emboldened, she took a deep breath. "Let us start with a meeting. I'll gather some people from the neighborhood, those who are genuinely invested in the outcome." "Thank you," Daniel said, relief flooding his features. But even as relief washed over her, an icy dread nestled in her stomach. It was a small victory, but Sarah knew this was merely the beginning. What if the people didn't trust him? What if they turned against her? As their meeting wrapped up, and she prepared to leave, she felt the encroaching weight of everything that lay ahead. A turning point had been made, but the journey was far from over. Sarah stepped out into the hallway, the noise of the protests engulfing her anew. She was now on the edge of something significant, but would she find the strength to navigate the storm ahead? In that moment, decisions loomed like shadows. Would she rise as a voice for her community or shrink back in fear? And deep down, she knew she had to ask herself, at what cost would she protect her child? The energy outside roared like a turbulent sea, and Sarah felt a pull toward it, as if the voices of the protesters were calling for her to join their fight. She brushed past the cluster of onlookers leaning on the glass door, ready to step back into the world that had been waiting for her. The sunlight momentarily blinded her, but it brought a warmth to her cheeks. Her mind was racing. The decision she had just made weighed heavily on her. She needed to rally her neighbors, but could she truly create momentum that would bridge the gap between Daniel's vision and her community's fears? Her heart divided between hope and doubt. She pushed through the crowd as she picked up snippets of their chants, "Our homes. Our voices." Sarah spotted Emma's small frame at the edge of the protest, her pigtails bouncing as she waved a makeshift sign. "Mommy. Mommy." Her eyes sparkled with excitement, unaware of the conflict brewing in her mother's heart. Seeing her daughter ignited a surge of something fierce within Sarah: protection, love, and the determination to fight against anything that would threaten the life they were building together. "Emma!" she shouted, rushing forward and gathering her daughter into her arms. The warmth of her embrace brought an immediate comfort, familiar and grounding. "Look!" Emma said with innocent enthusiasm, pointing at the sea of colorful signs and faces around them. "They want to save our neighborhood. Can we join them?" Sarah couldn't help but smile at her daughter's passion. "Yes, sweetie. We're going to be a part of it, but we also need to help find a way to bring everyone together." The words hung in the air, a reality that began to feel more plausible by the minute. She needed to acknowledge both the protesters and Daniel's proposal. But how? Sarah felt an emerging spark of possibility to fuse the two worlds in a way that honored her community while allowing for progress. As they joined the crowd, Sarah felt the rush of voices envelop her. One of her neighbors, a fiery woman named Nora, caught sight of her and waved her over. "Sarah! What is going on?" Nora's expression shifted from concern to curiosity. "I'm meeting with Daniel. I think there's a way to work together, but I want to hear what everyone thinks first." Nora narrowed her eyes. "Him? You trust him?" "Not yet. But he's open to talking. We can guide this." The murmurs in the crowd swelled, an intoxicating mix of skepticism and cautious hope. Sarah realized this meeting would be more than just an exchange of ideas, it would be a moment of reckoning for the community. She needed to ensure they knew their voices mattered not just to her, but to Daniel as well. "Let us organize a meeting," Sarah announced, her voice gaining strength. "I'll bring Daniel, and we'll lay it all out. Everyone must have a say." Cheers erupted from her neighbors, and Emma beamed with pride. Together, they could take action. Sarah felt like she was finding her footing in this chaotic world. But beneath the excitement lay an uneasy weight. What if Daniel didn't live up to his promise? What if her neighbors rejected him completely? The questions buzzed in her mind, threatening to undermine her resolve. As she glanced at Emma, she realized her daughter was watching her closely, gauging her confidence. And in that vulnerable moment, Sarah knew she had to lead not just for her but for every family in that crowd. "I won't let you down," she whispered to Emma, who nodded, blissfully unaware of the true stakes. That evening, as they returned home, their small apartment felt heavier with uncertainty. The plan loomed before them like a winding road, and all Sarah could do was hope it would lead them to a brighter future. Suddenly, her phone buzzed a text from Daniel. "Looking forward to the meeting. Let us reshape the future together." An uneasy feeling curled in her stomach. Could he really understand their community? Could he really fight alongside her for their dreams? And as the shadows of doubt crept in, one question loomed larger than the rest: would this partnership lead to solace or more struggles? The stakes were rising, and Sarah stood at the edge of a precipice, ready to jump into the fight for her community. But would it be enough? The morning sun draped over the neighborhood like a comforting blanket, but for Sarah, it did little to ease the unease knotting her stomach. She stood by the window, watching Emma play with her stuffed animals, completely oblivious to the storm brewing just beyond their doorstep. The weight of the upcoming meeting felt like a boulder resting on her chest. "Mommy, look what I can make." Emma's cheerful voice broke through her thoughts as she held up a jumble of colorful paper and glue. It was a collage of the things she loved: trees, houses, even a picture of their apartment. It struck Sarah as bittersweet, a beautiful representation of innocence grappling with the complexities of life. "That's amazing, sweetie," Sarah replied, forcing a smile to mask her anxiety. Yet, the prospect of merging their community with Daniel's corporate vision felt like dancing on a tightrope over a pit of uncertainties. "Are we really going to meet him today?" Emma asked, her eyes shining with curiosity as she peeked at Sarah from behind her creation. "Yeah, we are. It's important." "Will he be nice?" Her daughter's question hung in the air, fluttering like a butterfly. Sarah responded gently, "I hope so. He has some ideas that could help us, but we need to see if he really means it. Emma nodded, her attention drifting back to her collage. But Sarah's gaze lingered outside, where the anticipation of the meeting mingled with her fears. What if Daniel had no intention of truly listening? What if he viewed her community as just another project to build on without any regard for their feelings? As the clock ticked closer to the appointed time, Sarah dressed in her favorite blouse, a soft blue that mimicked the sky outside. She wanted to feel strong and confident, like a leader guiding her troops into battle. She even put on the earrings her mother had given her, the ones that sparkled like stars. Today, she needed to shine. When they arrived at the community center, the air was thick with energy. Neighbors milled about, their faces a mural of skepticism and hope. Sarah felt the pulse of the crowd quicken as they caught sight of her. But no one was more important than the people she could see in the back, whispering and exchanging glances. Would they follow her lead? "Hey!" Nora called, bustling toward her with a determined look. "Are you ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be. I just hope I can convince them." Nora put a hand on her shoulder. "You will. Just remember, you're not alone. We all want the same thing." A knot of nerves twisted again, but Sarah nodded, steeling herself. When Daniel arrived, a hush fell like a heavy blanket over the room. Dressed in a crisp suit, he appeared every bit the powerful man she had encountered before. But today, he was here to listen, to engage, and hopefully to make changes that mattered. "Thank you for coming," Sarah began, her voice carrying more confidence than she felt. "We're here because we believe our community deserves a voice. We want to know if your plans can truly benefit everyone." As she spoke, she watched Daniel. He was focused, keenly interested in every word. But could that interest translate into meaningful change? She introduced the group and called on her neighbors to share their feelings. Nora took the floor, detailing her worries about gentrification. Others echoed similar sentiments: fears of displacement, loss, and a community in danger. With each voice, Sarah felt the room pulse with collective emotion, vibrating with the story of their neighborhood. Just as it seemed they had built enough momentum, Daniel raised a hand. "I hear you," he said, his voice steady. "These concerns are valid, and I want to address them openly. Could this be the turning point?" The dialogue unfolded, rich with ideas, challenges, and even hints of compromise. Sarah felt herself easing into the rhythm of the conversation, passion meeting purpose, when suddenly, Daniel's phone buzzed. His gaze flicked away, and when he glanced back, his expression shifted slightly. "What is it?" Nora asked, a spark of concern igniting in her voice. Daniel hesitated, then replied, "I just received word from our development team there's been a significant change. I need to discuss it." Sarah's heart raced as the room fell silent. What did that mean for their progress? Was this all heading toward a trap? In that moment, Sarah realized that the very promise of change was precarious and could swiftly dissolve. As Daniel excused himself to take a call, a chill passed over Sarah. What awaited them on the other end? As murmurs swirled through the crowd, Sarah took a deep breath, aware of the stakes rising higher than ever before. This was a fight for not just their homes but their futures. Would they emerge stronger, or would this meeting unravel everything? With uncertainty heavy in the air, one thought whispered through her mind: the real test had only just begun. Sarah stood frozen in place, watching as Daniel walked away, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through his polished exterior. The crowd buzzed around her, voices intertwining with uncertainty, but she felt as if she were trapped in a bubble, suspended from the frantic energy that surrounded her. "What do you think that change is?" Nora's voice broke through her thoughts, drawing Sarah back into the moment. The worry in Nora's eyes mirrored Sarah's own. "I don't know," Sarah replied, trying to keep her tone steady. "But it can't be good." People began whispering among themselves, anxiety rippling through the room. She could see glances exchanged, some filled with fear, others with disbelief. How could they trust this man, this corporate giant who swept into their lives promising to listen only to leave them in suspense? Nora stepped closer, gripping Sarah's arm. We've come too far for this. We need to stay united. Remember what we talked about? Sarah took a deep breath, attempting to steady herself as she thought of Emma's collage, the hope and dreams that spoke of their tiny world. This was about more than just bricks and mortar. It was about heart, about family, about community. Okay, you're right. Sarah nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Let us show him we're not backing down. We have questions, and we deserve answers. Nora smiled, a little spark igniting in her eyes. Yes. Let us gather our thoughts and make sure he knows we mean business when he comes back. As a few neighbors began to whisper strategies, Sarah's mind raced. What if Daniel's call had been about cutting funding or speeding up the project to the detriment of the community? A million scenarios played out in her mind, each more chaotic than the last. She bit her lip, pushing those thoughts aside. The one thing they couldn't afford to lose now was their sense of purpose. A minute stretched indefinitely. Just as tensions threatened to boil over, Daniel returned, his demeanor refined but his eyes darting like a man lost in a storm. Thank you for your patience, he said, his voice almost mechanical. There's been an important shift within the company regarding our budget. He glanced at the crowd, taking in the worried faces waiting for his next words. Before he could continue, someone in the back shouted, "What are you doing to our homes?" The room erupted into murmurs of agreement. Sarah felt her heart pound as she scanned the crowd, hoping for just one voice of reason to soothe the brewing tempest. I understand your concerns, Daniel said again, attempting to maintain control. The company is re-evaluating its investments, and there are decisions we must make that may not align with everyone's ideals. I want you all to be the first to hear about these changes. Why should we trust you? Nora called out, her voice a mix of courage and fear. The crowd rallied behind her, clapping and showing their support. Daniel's gaze fixed on Sarah, lingering longer than necessary as if he were gauging her reaction. Because while I may represent corporate interests, I also understand the value of this community. I see it, I feel it. There are costs to consider, but so are the human factors at risk. Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but Daniel continued before she could find her words. And that's exactly why I want to form a community panel, allowing you to have a voice throughout the construction process. Surprise rippled through the crowd. A community panel? It sounded like a step forward, but Sarah's instinct wrestled with skepticism. Can you promise that we'll have real influence? She asked, her voice quaking with determination. This matter touches the very heart of our lives. We can't let you decide our fate without us. Daniel nodded, but the set of his jaw told her that the deal wasn't cut and dry. I respect that, Sarah. I want you to help shape this vision, but I need you to understand the realities of the situation. Reality. The word hung in the air, heavy with implications. Sarah felt the weight of every neighbor leaning into this moment, their hopes, dreams, and fears. Suspended in the balance, suddenly, Daniel's phone buzzed again, cutting through the charged atmosphere. He glanced at the screen, and his brow furrowed. Excuse me for just a moment, he said, turning away swiftly. The crowd stirred, confusion spreading like wildfire. As he walked to the corner, Sarah exchanged anxious glances with Nora and others. What was happening now? A gnawing feeling of dread began to ripple through her. Our lives are turning on a knife's edge, Sarah whispered, feeling the familiar knot in her stomach tighten. They had come so far, but if Daniel's next words shifted the balance, would everything they hoped for slip away like sand through their fingers? With anxious breath caught in her throat, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was still ahead. The questions lingered: could they truly trust Daniel? And would he uphold his promise to involve the community, or would their voices be lost in the shadows of corporate decisions? As the waiting grew unbearable, a chilling thought struck Sarah: what if the storm wasn't just outside their doors, but brewing within? The crowd's whispers grew louder, echoing in Sarah's ears as the tension thickened like fog. She watched Daniel, his posture rigid, speaking intently into his phone while the muted buzz of conversation flared around her. The sight of him, marked by authority yet shrouded in uncertainty, deepened her unease. Nora leaned in, her voice a soft tremor. What if this community panel is just a facade? A way to manage us while pushing through their agenda? Sarah nodded slowly, her mind racing through every possibility. We have to be vigilant. We can't let ourselves be pushed aside. Taking a steadying breath, she decided to gather her thoughts. Let us make a list of our demands, things that can't just be brushed aside. He owes us that, and we owe it to each other. As Nora moved to rally more people, Sarah pulled out a small notebook from her bag. She held the pen tight, feeling the empowerment rise as she began jotting down the key points: transparency, genuine community engagement, and respect for their homes. But as she focused, Daniel returned to the center of the room, his expression shifted, more serious now. I apologize for the interruption. He took a deep breath, scanning the crowd with apprehension. I received word that there are potential budget cuts on the table, major changes that directly impact our project, and I need to address this with you. Sarah's heart skipped. Each word felt like an alarm bell. Potential budget cuts? What does that mean for us? She stood, unwavering, feeling the collective eyes of her neighbors fixated on Daniel, awaiting both reassurance and truth. He shifted under their scrutiny, the weight of multiple interests clearly pressing on his shoulders. It means adjustments. If necessary, we might need to reassess certain commitments. Time frames may need to be shortened. Daniel's voice was steady but had a slight tremor, as if he feared the crowd's response could erupt again. Before anyone could react, Sarah felt a mix of anger and panic. You're telling us our lives might be changed based on numbers on a spreadsheet? Her voice rose, catching the attention of everyone around. How can you make these decisions for us without listening to our voices? Daniel's gaze softened as he met her eye. I understand, Sarah, truly I do. And that's exactly why I want to hold meetings, listening sessions just like this one, to gather your thoughts together before anything is finalized. Listening sessions? Murmurs filled the room. Sarah searched Daniel's eyes, looking for honesty buried beneath his corporate facade. And you believe that's enough? He hesitated, taking a step closer. I do not have all the answers yet, but I hope we can find them together. I want to work alongside you. The room buzzed with uncertainty, but one thing was clear: Daniel's face reflected a growing desperation for connection, an opening beyond the typical corporate shield. Could it be possible he wasn't entirely the enemy Sarah feared? As the murmurs swelled, two opposing forces collided within her. Her instinct to protect her community and her budding curiosity ignited a fire inside her. Maybe collaboration was a path, a chance to bridge the gap between corporate interests and community values. All right, Sarah said, couldn't help but feel emboldened. If you're serious about this, we'll hold you to that. No more empty promises. We want actionable steps. A flicker crossed Daniel's expression, a hint of relief paired with the apprehension that clung to his brow. I promise, Sarah. Together, we will work this out. Suddenly, another loud buzz cut through the air as Daniel's phone rang again, vibrating intensely on the table. He hesitated for a moment, looking torn between his device and the crowd. Finally, he answered, a shadow crossing his features as he moved outside for privacy. Sarah turned to Nora, who was watching her with wide, hopeful eyes. What if he's genuine? What if we could actually be a part of this change? Nora's positive demeanor was contagious. It could transform everything, she replied softly. Imagine having a real say in what happens next. We have to give this a chance. But just as hope began to blossom in Sarah's heart, a familiar voice pierced through the clouds. It was Emma, her daughter, clutching a paper tightly in her small hands. Mom! I just got this note. There's more going on. Sarah's heart raced as she reached for the paper, drawn into the unfolding story. What did Emma discover? What secrets lay beneath the surface of Daniel's words? Would they find the strength to brave whatever storm came next? Sarah's fingers trembled as she grasped the folded note. Her daughter's urgency sent a jolt through her, amplifying the collective tension in the room. She felt the weight of so many eyes as she carefully unfolded the paper. "What does it say, Mom?" Emma asked, her bright eyes filled with a mix of excitement and worry. The words blurred momentarily as Sarah read, her heart racing against the rhythm of the crowd's whispers. It's a letter from the landlord," she said, voice shaking. "It talks about an unexpected grant assistance to help families at risk of losing their homes." Emma's small fingers fidgeted with the edge of the paper. "Does that mean we're safe?" For a heartbeat, Sarah didn't respond. The fog of uncertainty rolled back, leaving behind a flicker of hope. "It might mean we're okay. But we have to be careful. This could come with strings attached." Daniel returned just as she was processing, a tight smile plastered on his face. "Everything all right?" "Emma just got this note," Sarah barely managed to say. She held it out, her heart wild with questions. "What do you know about this grant?" Daniel sidled closer, reading the note. "This is interesting. The grant aligns with the community project I mentioned. Funding for families facing displacement could be tied to our initiatives. Are you saying this is your doing?" Sarah pressed, a mix of skepticism and curiosity sparking in her voice. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "Not directly, but yes, I've pushed for these types of support. It's part of the plan I mentioned earlier, the collab, the sessions." His eyes softened, a human side emerging from behind the corporate veil. "It's not just about numbers. These resources could genuinely help families like yours." "And what's the catch?" Sarah couldn't help but challenge him, heart racing again. "There's always a catch in situations like this." He met her gaze steadily. "We want community input. I'm not here to sweep anything under the rug. If there's valid concern, I want to hear it and address it." A skeptical murmur rippled through the crowd, but Sarah felt something shifting within her. Perhaps Daniel wasn't the corporate monster she'd pictured. Maybe there was a possibility for honest dialogue, a chance to protect their homes. "Can we trust you?" Sarah pressed, feeling the weight of her community's hopes resting on his shoulders. He nodded slowly. "Trust takes time. But what you're feeling is valid and needed. Let us work together to ensure these funds don't just disappear or become another empty promise." The crowd was a mix of hopeful faces and calculating glances. Emma remained at her side, her innocence a stark contrast to the adult complexities crowding in. Sarah realized that this moment could bridge a gap, bringing both community and corporate leaders together. "Mom, what does this mean for us?" Emma's small voice broke through the tension. "It means we might have a chance," Sarah replied, her own voice stronger now. "But we have to stay smart. We have to hold everyone accountable." As she looked around, gathering courage from her neighbors, Sarah's resolve strengthened. She felt a determination to stand up for what was right. They could ride this wave of change, but she needed to ensure it wouldn't crash in the midst of the charged atmosphere. Emma tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, look." With her heart in her throat, Sarah turned to see a group of residents, led by Nora, advancing toward Daniel. "We need the truth," Nora declared, her voice sharp with purpose. "Are you ready to face whatever comes next?" Sarah asked, looking at Daniel, not quite sure what to expect. Daniel inhaled deeply, the weight of the moment resettling over them. "I'll do everything in my power to help. But I need you all with me." "Then let us do this," Sarah said, her heart thrumming with a mix of hope and apprehension. "But we need clear answers." With the crowd rallying behind her, she wondered if this was a new beginning or simply the prelude to something far more complex. Could they truly navigate this path together, as they began laying the groundwork for their collaboration. Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. Would this really bring the change their community desperately needed, or was it just the calm before a bigger storm? The crowd around Sarah thickened, palpable tension hanging in the air. She could sense the collective heartbeat of anticipation, each resident leaning a little closer, their expressions shifting from skepticism to cautious optimism as they waited for Daniel to respond. Why should we trust this grant? Nora's voice cut through the murmurs. We've heard promises before. It's easy to say you want to help, but what real changes can you show us? With his back straightened and determination etched on his face, Daniel nodded. I understand the hesitation. You've lived it, and fear can be a powerful motivator. But let me outline what we can accomplish together. This grant isn't just about money, it's about community. If we combine our voices, we can ensure the funds are distributed wisely. Wise how? A man from the crowd interrupted, his hands on his hips, the weight of his family's plight firmly on his shoulders. My wife works 2 jobs. I'm barely scraping by myself. How will your initiative help us when it feels like we are getting pushed aside? Daniel stepped closer, voice lowering a notch as if drawing them in. I want to hear stories like yours. Real stories that inspire solutions. We are gathering your input for planning sessions, and I want you to be part of the process. This isn't just top-down management, this is about you families, parents, kids. You matter. Emma squeezed Sarah's hand tighter, her small frame leaning into her mother. Sarah felt her daughter's uncertainty reflected in the tightness of her grip. One glance at Emma's face reminded her of the innocence they were all trying to protect. Part of Sarah wanted to believe him. There was something disarming in Daniel's earnestness, an openness that felt foreign when it came to corporate affairs. But the other part of her screamed to guard her hopes, urging caution amidst the raw sentiment that filled the room. Okay, Sarah spoke up, capturing the crowd's attention. We're willing to listen, but we need action. No more words. We need timelines, concrete plans. We need to see change, not just hear about it. The crowd erupted in murmurs of agreement, voices gaining volume and passion. This was their moment to reclaim their dignity and fight for what was rightfully theirs. Hope flickered in the depths of some eyes while others remained skeptical. Daniel's nod was slow but assured. I'll get those timelines ready. I'll make sure you know how every penny is spent. But I need you all involved. That means coming together. Join me in these planning sessions, share your needs, your resources. I can't do it alone. Then what's next? Nora's expression shifted from doubt to resolve. When do we start this? Waiting any longer feels like a gamble we can't afford. How about now? Daniel proposed, his voice cutting through the fading anxiety. We can schedule our first meeting for later this week. A community workshop, right here, where we can map out the process, put everything on the table. A low murmur swept through the crowd again, this time charged with enthusiasm. Parents exchanged glances, kids sensed a change, and for the first time, Sarah's heart leapt with the possibility of not only survival but a path towards growth. Emma tugged at her sleeve again, excitement glimmering in her eyes. Mom, can we go? Can we really be part of this? Yes, sweetheart, Sarah replied, her voice steadier now. We can. This could be our chance. As murmurs of agreement cascaded like ripples through the crowd, a sense of unity emerged, transforming fear into newfound determination. For the first time, Sarah felt the tide shifting, but just as the promise of a brighter future seemed to engulf them, a commotion erupted at the back of the room. Sarah turned to see a figure stepping forward, a familiar face with urgency etched deeply in their expression, a person she hadn't expected to see here tonight. Wait! The figure shouted, voice cutting above the hopeful voices. You need to hear what I have to say before moving forward. Sarah's stomach tightened. Who could this be, and what did they have to say that could change everything? The crowd fell silent as Sarah squinted through the dim light, trying to identify the person who had interrupted the moment. It was Mr. Carter, their landlord, a man whose presence usually spelled trouble, now radiating urgency. "What is going on?" Nora pressed, her tone tense with anticipation. Sarah felt a knot of dread swell in her stomach. She had hoped that this would be a breakthrough, a way to reclaim their lives. But now, uncertainty flooded back to Mr. Carter cleared his throat, his graying hair tousled and his brow lined with worry. "I heard what you were planning, and I need you to know there are changes happening that may affect our community, especially with regards to the grants." "What do you mean?" Sarah stepped forward, her heart pounding. "Is there something we should be aware of?" Carter glanced around, his eyes darting nervously at the crowd. "There have been rumors about selling the properties to pay off debts. If that happens, we might lose our homes before anything gets finalized." Gasps rippled through the room, shockwaves reverberating in Sarah's chest. "No, this can't be happening. We're fighting for our homes, for a future." Daniel stepped forward, his expression shifting from shocked to focused. "We need clarity on this matter. What's the timeline? What does this mean for the residents?" Carter waved his hands, trying to calm the advancing tide of voices. "I'm not saying it's definite, but the bank is eyeing the properties as potential collateral." A mixture of fear and anger surged in Sarah. "So, while we sit here trying to save our neighborhood, the very ground beneath us could be taken?" Daniel interjected, voice smooth but urgent. "Mr. Carter, we can work together. Let us ensure that community voices are heard before any rash decisions are made. You owe it to your tenants." "Right," Carter replied, deflating somewhat. "I didn't know this would be unveiled tonight. But without community support, I have to consider my options." A collective murmuring spread through the crowd. Sarah felt the chaos in her heart. How could a change of heart be possible with this looming threat? But then she looked at Emma, who remained close, her eyes revealing a silent strength she didn't yet recognize. "This isn't a lost cause," Sarah found her voice rising against the noise. "If we unite residents and landlords, we can negotiate. We can create a plan to protect our community together, but only if we stand firm." A surge of courage spread among her neighbors. They began to nod in agreement, sensing an opportunity rather than despair. Daniel stepped in again, now a figure of unity. "Let us put our fears aside and lay out our intentions. Let us ensure the decisions made serve us all." Sarah clasped her hands together, heart racing with the turn of events. "I agree. We can't allow this fear to divide us. We must demand transparency from all parties involved, the landlords, Daniel, and ourselves." Again, murmurs of agreement bubbled up through the crowd. Voices rose as plans began forming, like strands weaving through the fabric of their hopes. "We want to be part of the process," someone shouted from the back. "No more secrets." Mr. Carter nodded solemnly. "You're right, I have to step up as well. I never wanted to lose this community, but I need assurance for my interests too." Sarah turned to Daniel, whose expression now held determination. "If you mean what you say, then with your support, we can all make this work. This isn't just about protecting homes, it's about restoring faith." The atmosphere sparked with renewed purpose, a sense of unity breathing vigor through the crowd. Sarah felt invigorated as they collectively filled the room with their vision, a redesign of the narrative that had left them vulnerable too long. As they began forming cohesive action steps together, Sarah couldn't help but feel the tides turning. Perhaps amidst uncertainty, there was a chance to rebuild and ensure all voices thrived in this space. Daniel was right in wanting change, but now they could genuinely walk this path together, neighbors and corporate interests hand in hand. With Emma holding her hand, hope glimmered like the sunlight breaking through the clouds outside. They'd fight for their neighborhood. They'd make room for every story, every dream, and together, they'd reclaim not just their homes, but the very spirit of their community. As Sarah stood resolute, she looked around at all the faces illuminated with determination. This was no longer just her battle. It was theirs. In that moment, she knew their transformation was just beginning. So to everyone watching, if you believe in the strength of community, in the power of voice, hit that subscribe button immediately to not miss out on our exclusive stories. You need to show your support with a like right now, feeding the algorithm that connects us all. And don't forget to comment with your thoughts and feelings about this powerful ending. If you have friends who need to be inspired, this is the moment to share this video with at least 5 of them, reminding us all of the transformation that comes when we stand together. Don't wait not even one more second to be part of this journey.